My name is Thayer. Not Taylor. Not Tyler. Thayer, like the old name no one remembers. Fitting, I guess, because that's how I felt watching my wife at that corporate event, like something people used to care about, then forgot existed. The room was filled with laughter, glasses clinking, people in clothes more expensive than our first car. I stood near the corner by the faux marble column, holding a glass of something sparkling I didn't ask for. The lighting was too flattering, too perfect, like the whole night had been designed to stage her new life. And I was just the relic that accidentally showed up. Merritt, my wife, moved through the crowd like she belonged to someone else's world. And maybe she did. Her smile was calculated, soft but sharp. Her laugh? A little too generous. Her eyes? They never searched for me. Not once. But I saw her. I saw everything. The way she leaned in too close to that guy in the slate gray vest. The way he touched her arm. The way she didn't move. And the moment she finally looked across the room, spotted me, and pretended to be surprised I was still there. She started walking toward me. And just when she reached out, fingertips brushing mine, I whispered, "Not after that." She froze. And the smile dropped like a mask sliding off a face. But that was only the start. Because you don't really understand betrayal until you realize it's been rehearsed. Every day, right beside you. She stood there frozen, hands still slightly raised like she'd forgotten what it was supposed to be doing. For a second, the music and the chatter behind her faded, like the world respectfully held its breath. I could tell she wanted to say something clever, maybe a deflection like she always used when things got too real, something along the lines of, "You're being dramatic, Thayer," or "Let's not do this here." But I'd already decided. I wasn't going to make a scene. That would have made her the victim. I was done playing the part she assigned me years ago, the soft-spoken, overly accommodating husband who always took the high road, even when that road was paved with her excuses and half-truths. I stepped back. Just once. And she blinked like she'd been slapped with wind. That guy in the slate vest, his name's Brandon, I'd later find out, watched the whole thing from a few feet away. He had the nerve to smirk. Not at me. Not at her. Just smirk. As if he knew how this was going to play out before I even arrived. As if I was the only one in the room who didn't get the script. That moment, that one moment, split something in me. We left early. Correction, I left early. I didn't storm out. I didn't slam anything. I just turned around and walked out into the freezing February night without my coat. I could still hear the clinking of silverware behind the glass doors as I stood on the curb, trying to breathe without letting it shake. She didn't come after me. I waited in the car for 20 minutes before finally starting the engine. My phone stayed quiet the whole ride home. You'd think after all those years together, she'd at least send one message. "Where are you? Or can we talk?" But no, nothing. And honestly, that silence told me more than any long confession ever could. Back home, I sat in the dark kitchen for hours, trying to find a reason this hurt so much. I'd known something was off for a long time, maybe even years. The late nights. The guarded phone. The emotional distance masked as just being tired. But it's strange how your brain will build excuses just to keep your heart from catching fire. And now, here I was. Burned anyway. I walked into our bedroom around 2 a.m. The place smelled like her vanilla and expensive moisturizer, but felt cold, like no one had truly lived there in months. Her heels were still on the carpet where she'd kicked them off that morning. A necklace lay on the dresser, the one I gave her for our 9th anniversary. I picked it up, stared at it for a long time, and then dropped it into the drawer without a word. She came home at 3:12 a.m. I didn't get up. I didn't ask where she'd been. I heard the front door open slowly, heard the cautious sound of her purse being placed on the table. She crept into the bedroom like a thief who had no idea what she'd already stolen. When she saw me sitting on the edge of the bed, awake, she froze again, just like at the event. Only this time, there were no witnesses. No performance. Just us. "What are you doing?" she asked, like I was the one who had disrupted everything. I looked at her for a long time, and when I finally spoke, it came out low and steady, almost too calm. "Do you even remember what it's like to feel guilty, Merritt?" She didn't answer. She just stared at me like I was speaking a language she'd forgotten. She didn't answer. Not right away. She stood there like she was waiting for the right tone to strike, the right sentence to deploy, as if she were rehearsing internally which version of herself she should be tonight. Angry? Apologetic? Coldly professional? I could practically hear the wheels turning. I'd seen her do this in meetings, over dinners, even on phone calls with her sisters. Control was her gift. And this time, It was slipping. Finally, Merritt crossed her arms and leaned against the doorframe like we were having a routine disagreement about groceries. "Can we not do this in the middle of the night?" she said. I nodded slowly. "Sure. You want to put it in the calendar? Or should I check with Brandon's assistant?" Her jaw tensed so subtly you'd miss it if you weren't looking for it. But I was looking now. I was seeing her, really seeing her, in a way I never had before. Not just the woman who shared my bed or poured my coffee or posted curated couple selfies on our anniversary. I saw someone who had made space in her heart for someone else, and done it in silence, without even the decency to lie out loud. "I don't know what you think you saw," she finally said. There it was. Not denial. Not confession. Just the classic in-between, ambiguity. It's the kind of thing people say when they don't want to admit the full truth, but also don't care enough to lie properly. That's what hurt the most. Not that she cheated, but that she'd become so indifferent to the consequences. Like I wasn't even worth deceiving anymore. I stood up and walked past her. No yelling. No accusations. Just a quiet shift of gravity in the room. She followed me down the hallway like a shadow, silent, attached, but not really part of me. "Thayer," she called behind me, voice thinner now, like she'd just realized she'd pushed too far and too long. I turned around slowly. Nothing happened. Not really. She paused, then added with a shrug that made me nauseous. "We've worked late a lot. Maybe things got blurry." "Blurry," I repeated, voice flat. She nodded once, as if to make it official. But nothing crossed a line. I stared at her for a long moment. I wanted to believe that. God, a part of me was begging to believe that. But it wasn't about what had or hadn't physically happened. It was the way she looked at him across that room. The way she never once looked for me. The way she laughed at his jokes like I'd never made her laugh. That wasn't blur. That was clarity she didn't want to name. "You know what the worst part is?" I asked, my voice low. "It's not Brandon. It's not even the lies. It's that you forgot how to be my friend." She blinked like she didn't expect that. But I meant it. You don't just lose love overnight. You lose the tiny things first. The way she used to sit beside me on the couch and unconsciously rest her foot on mine. The way she'd wake me up when she had nightmares and need to hear my voice before she could fall back asleep. The way she used to call me on her lunch breaks just to tell me about someone spilling coffee in the elevator. Now it was work. Just work. Long hours, endless meetings, out-of-town conferences. Always too tired. Always somewhere else. And me? I became background noise in my own home. She didn't respond. Maybe because she knew I was right. Maybe because somewhere deep inside, she had stopped feeling anything and didn't realize it until I finally did too. We slept in the same bed that night. I faced the wall. Her breathing was too even, too forced. Like she was pretending to sleep. Or maybe she was pretending she still belonged there. But I lay awake for hours, eyes burning, heart numb. I wasn't angry. Not in the explosive way people expect. I just felt displaced. Like someone had removed me from my own story and replaced me with a less interesting character. At some point around 4 a.m., I got up and walked into the hallway. I stared at the framed photo from our 3rd anniversary. Us on a beach in Carmel, wind in her hair, my hand around her waist, both of us laughing at something I can't even remember now. I took it down, looked at the back, and found a note in my handwriting. "No one makes me feel more like myself than you." I don't even remember writing that, but I remember believing it. And that's when I realized she didn't just betray me. She made me doubt my own memory of love. And that's a kind of betrayal that lingers far longer than one night at a corporate party. The next morning, she acted like nothing had happened. She brewed coffee, tossed on a sweatshirt, and scrolled her phone at the kitchen table like we hadn't stood in the hallway exchanging broken pieces of our marriage just a few hours earlier. I watched her from the living room in silence, arms crossed, wondering how someone could look so casual while standing in the ruins of something they helped burn down. She didn't bring up what I said. She didn't ask how I was feeling. She just asked if we had any oat milk left. It was in that exact moment I understood something. Merritt wasn't going to confess. Not unless I cornered her with proof. And even then, I wasn't sure she'd feel bad. Maybe embarrassed. But not guilty. And that terrified me more than anything else. So I did something I never thought I'd do. I opened her laptop. I know how it sounds. Petty. Weak. Like the kind of thing insecure people do in bad sitcoms. But it didn't feel like snooping. It felt like survival. Like I was bleeding out from doubt and needed something, anything, to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. It was unlocked. No password. Her confidence in my trust had made her careless. I opened her browser, expecting to find nothing, maybe a few YouTube videos, some work docs. But her Gmail was open, and that's where it all started. There wasn't anything overt at first, but I scrolled back a few months and found a pattern. Emails from Brandon. Subject lines like, "Tonight's client dinner," and "Need to stay late again." Some had nothing in the body, just the subject, as if they'd already said everything that needed to be said. Then I found one that broke me. It was from 4 weeks ago, late at night. Subject line, "Safe." Inside was just one sentence. I still think about that moment in the elevator. Wish we could have stayed there longer. I stared at it for so long the screen dimmed. I read it over and over, hoping I was missing context. But there was no context that made it innocent. And her reply, "Me too." That whole night was confusing, but amazing was even worse. It wasn't graphic. It wasn't detailed, but it was clear. Something happened. And it wasn't just physical, it was emotional. Intimate. Something they shared behind my back while I was probably at home folding her laundry or reheating her leftovers. I felt sick. The walls of the house suddenly felt too close, like they were leaning in on me. I closed the laptop, got up, and walked outside barefoot onto the porch, the cold wood boards grounding me like I needed proof the world still existed outside that glowing screen. I didn't confront her that day. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to hear the justifications, the half-truths, the carefully packaged language people use when they don't want to admit what they've done. I needed more. I needed clarity. So the next day, I drove to her office building during my lunch break. I parked across the street and sat in my car with the windows cracked. I told myself it was stupid, that I was becoming the guy who spies on his wife. But I didn't leave. And I'm glad I didn't. At 5:47 p.m., I saw her come out. Not alone. Brandon was beside her, carrying nothing, not even a briefcase. His hand brushed hers at the crosswalk. She smiled. Not the smile she gives at dinner parties. Not the one she posts on Instagram. This was a soft, private smile, like she was letting him see the version of her she used to save for me. They crossed the street and disappeared into the parking garage. I waited. 10 minutes. Then 15. She didn't come out. At 6:12, her car finally exited. Alone. She drove right past me without a glance. Windows up. Music playing. Like she was returning from any other day at work. But something in me had shifted. The doubt was gone. And in its place sat something colder, sharper. Certainty. I didn't cry that night. I didn't even ask questions. I sat in the kitchen staring at my reflection in the black screen of the microwave while she took a long shower upstairs. I heard her humming. I didn't recognize the tune. Probably something they listened to on their drive. Or in the elevator. Or wherever the hell else their affair had lived and breathed and grown while I was busy being her husband on paper. And when she came down, damp hair, pajamas, phone in hand, she looked at me and said, "You okay? You look tired." I almost laughed. But instead, I said the one sentence I knew would shift everything. "I know about the elevator." She froze. For once, she had no script. And for the first time in years, I saw her afraid, not of me, but of the truth finally catching up. "I know about the elevator." I watched the color drain from her face like someone had reached behind her eyes and pulled the brightness out by force. For a second, she stood completely still, like a machine processing a command it didn't recognize. Then she set her phone down on the counter, very slowly, like she thought moving carefully would stop the world from breaking. "You went through my email," she said after a long silence, her voice flat, no guilt, no shock, just a quiet attempt at regaining control. I nodded once. "That's what you took from it?" She didn't answer right away. I could see her trying to calculate how much I knew, how much I didn't, and whether there was still room for denial. She didn't realize it yet, but it didn't matter. I wasn't looking for apologies. I wasn't even looking for reasons. I just wanted the silence to end. "You've been different for a long time," I said, my voice steady, too calm for the room. And I kept convincing myself it was work. Stress. Maybe I wasn't trying hard enough. Maybe I was boring. Maybe you just needed space. But it wasn't that, was it? Still, nothing. You gave yourself to someone else, Merritt. Not all at once, maybe, but piece by piece. You handed him the parts of you I used to love most. Her eyes welled, but I didn't trust the tears. It was too late for that. I had cried enough for both of us. She opened her mouth, then closed it. Then finally said, "It wasn't like that." "Then tell me how it was." Silence. That silence hurt worse than anything else. It screamed louder than an admission, louder than a fight. Because in it, I heard what she wouldn't say, that the part of her I used to call home no longer existed. Eventually, she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to happen." I shook my head. You don't accidentally get into elevators at 10 p.m. with someone you work with. You don't accidentally smile at him like you used to smile at me. You don't accidentally send late-night emails reminiscing about amazing nights. Her lips trembled, but she didn't fight back. Maybe because she knew. Maybe because there was nothing left to protect. "I was lonely," she finally said. "You were always there, but you weren't there. You stopped asking me how I was. You were just predictable." Predictable. That word felt like a hammer to the chest. All the nights I stayed up waiting for her. All the meals I made. The errands I ran. The birthday gifts I picked out months in advance. All the effort I put into making our life feel steady, she reduced it to that one word. Predictable. "You know what's funny?" I said, leaning back against the kitchen island. "That's exactly why I thought you loved me. Because I was solid. Because I didn't flake out when things got hard. Because I stayed." She looked down. "I gave you peace," I said. "You wanted noise." Merritt didn't argue. And that silence confirmed it. Her heart had moved on long before her body ever followed. We didn't sleep that night. Not really. She cried. I sat in the hallway staring at the coat hooks where her scarves still hung. I thought about the first winter we moved in here. How I built that stupid IKEA bench she said would make our entryway feel warm and intentional. How we danced in our socks on moving day, eating takeout from plastic containers. When had that version of us died? Was it quiet? Or had I missed the explosion completely? By morning, we both looked like we'd aged 10 years. We sat across from each other in the living room, both too drained to argue, too exhausted to lie. Her hands trembled around her mug. Mine stayed clenched in my lap. "I never planned to leave you," she said quietly. That hurt more than if she had. Because it meant she was going to keep pretending. Keep having both. Keep building a second life in the shadows of the first. "You didn't have to," I replied. "You already did." That day, we didn't talk about divorce. We didn't talk about anything practical at all. We just existed in a strange, suspended state where everything felt fragile and temporary. She went upstairs and packed a small overnight bag. Said she needed time. Said she'd stay with her sister for a few days. I didn't stop her. I didn't ask when she'd be back. I didn't hug her or follow her out the door. I just stood at the window and watched her car disappear down the street. For the first time in over a decade, the house felt still. And I didn't know whether that stillness was peace or the start of something much worse. The house was too quiet. That's the thing no one tells you about separation. It's not just the missing presence. It's the stillness. The kind that wraps around you like a weighted blanket you didn't ask for. I could hear the hum of the fridge, the click of the heating system, even the subtle creak of the hardwood under my socks. And every sound felt louder with her gone. 3 days passed. She didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't even know what I'd say if I did. I went through the motions. Work. Eat. Stare. Sleep barely. I spent a lot of time in the garage where her presence didn't exist. Just tools, paint cans, things untouched by her carefully curated life. It was like a bunker for my sanity. Somewhere that didn't smell like her shampoo or carry the echo of her voice. On the 4th day, I went into the guest room to grab an old blanket. It had become the place where random junk landed, holiday decorations, extra linens, old boxes of tax documents. But when I opened the bottom drawer of the dresser, something new was sitting on top, a pale blue envelope, unsealed. It was addressed to her. From her workplace. No postmark. Hand-delivered. I knew I shouldn't read it. I stood there for a full minute, just staring. But eventually, I opened it. Inside was a printed itinerary. Hotel reservation. Room service receipt. A single-line memo at the bottom. Hope this helps smooth things over. B. Brandon. The date on the receipt? 3 months ago. A random Thursday night, when she said she was working late because her team had to finalize a pitch. She didn't just lie. She planned it. I held the papers in my hands like they might combust. My legs actually gave out. I sat on the bed in silence, reading them over and over again. The meals. The spa charges. The room upgrade. 2 guests listed. All of it neatly organized. Intentional. This wasn't blurry. This wasn't confusion. This was betrayal with a paper trail. I didn't cry. That surprised me. I thought I would. But the tears had dried up days ago. What replaced them was something colder, clarity. Not rage. Just a quiet finality that started seeping into my bones. When I put the envelope back, I did it slowly, carefully, The way someone closes the door to a room they know they'll never enter again. That night, I made a decision. One she wouldn't see coming. But I wasn't going to scream it. I was going to disappear from the story she thought she controlled. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need closure. I just needed out. That night, I opened the closet and stood there staring at my side. The smaller half, as always. Half the hangers, half the drawers. It was funny, in a dark way, how you start to accept less space as normal when your life is shared with someone who always takes more. I pulled out my old duffel bag, the one I hadn't touched since our trip to Asheville, back when things were still good, or at least good enough to fake it. I packed slow, just the basics, clothes, my charger, the watch my dad left me, and a small notebook I hadn't written in for years. I didn't touch anything of hers. No revenge. No sabotage. I wasn't trying to send a message. I just didn't want to be in that house when she came back. There wasn't a specific plan. I had a friend upstate with a cabin. We hadn't talked in months, but I knew he'd let me stay for a while. I didn't leave a note. I just took my keys, wallet, and bag, locked the front door behind me, and drove. No music. No calls. No GPS. Just the open road and the feeling that I was finally doing something for myself. Not to hurt her, not to prove anything, but because I had nothing left to wait for. It took her 4 days to realize I was gone. 4 days before she called my phone at 6:32 a.m., her voice rushed and breathless in the voicemail. "Thayer, where are you? The car's here. Your stuff's gone. Please, just tell me you're okay." I was okay. For the first time in years, I was okay. I didn't answer. I listened to the voicemail from the porch of the cabin, a mug of black coffee in my hand, pine trees stretching in every direction. No noise. No pretending. Just air I could finally breathe. She sent 5 texts, then 9, then silence. I imagined her walking through the house, trying to track what was missing and what wasn't. She'd probably check the drawers, look for a letter, maybe even try to convince herself it was just a break, something temporary. But this wasn't temporary. I hadn't left out of anger. I'd left out of clarity. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to scream or fight. It's to walk away from a place you were never meant to stay. I didn't need closure from her. The real closure was knowing that I didn't have to shrink anymore to keep someone else comfortable. In the weeks that followed, I started waking up early. I ran. I wrote. I sat by the lake and remembered what silence was supposed to feel like. Not cold or cruel, but peaceful. One morning, I opened that old notebook I'd packed and started writing the truth. Not about her, but about me. About how easy it is to lose yourself when you're trying to keep something broken from falling apart. About how healing doesn't always start with forgiveness. It starts with leaving. Merritt did send one final message a few weeks later. Just one line. "Can we talk?" I read it twice, then deleted it. Not because I hated her, but because I finally loved myself enough to not go back. And that's the moment I knew the story was no longer about her. It was about me.